On this episode of Booked on Rock, it's the story of Slayer, the music, the mayhem, the metal. All coming up next with author DX Ferris. Hey guys, welcome back to Booked on Rock. I'm Eric Senich, a first-time guest on the show, DX Ferris. By the way, we call you DX Ferris. I know you go by Ferris in the emails.
Yeah, everybody I like, including my wife, calls me Ferris. So,
All right, cool.
You having me on here with all your illustrious guests, please consider yourself eligible for the friends and family plan.
Gotcha. Now, something with your camera, you're going blurry and then clear. I don't know if that's
sorry, that is that's like a 2004 webcam. I got the wrong kind of monitor when I had to do an emergency upgrade to my system, and I didn't think about a webcam until the last minute.
All good. It just enhances the experience.
Please consider the janky quality part of the aesthetic.
Ferris is the author of Slayer 66 2/3, a metal band biography. This is the fourth edition of the book. It's been selling since 2013. It's piggybacking off of your 33 1/3 book about Slayer's Reign in Blood.
Right. This fourth edition spun out of my weekly podcast. For a couple of years now, I've been doing a weekly podcast called Talking Slayer, a metal podcast and half-assed audio book. So what I started doing 2 years ago was I was just reading a chapter or two from the book every week. And then right when it was nearly done and I had the audio book nearly ready to go, Slayer, the one band that looked like they were going to retire and stay retired and never play again, they got back together. So that forced my hand. That made me update a lot of things. That made me witness some things. And next thing you know, a year later, much bigger version of the book. Previous version of the book was 350 pages, had 450 research citations and notes, that kind of thing. New version of it, the longest version of the fourth edition, runs 639 pages and has 795 research citations and endnotes.
Wow.
New things have come to light. Can I curse on this? Or
Oh, absolutely. By all means, I want you to. I demand.
So to quote a former Metallica roadie, who may or may not be a real person, new shit has come to light in the world of Slayer.
Slayer fans must love the book.
The feedback so far has been very positive. You know, there are guys that are, and when I say guys, the fans of the show are almost entirely guys. So I'm not saying that in a negligent sense. We do have other people that listen, but they've been very supportive the whole time. I just got my first print review of it, which is, my head's still spinning from it. You know, I was hoping people would like it, but I couldn't have written a review that good for myself. The fans like it. The fans like how they look. It blows my mind that people have bought this 4 times now, but every time it's a lot different, you know?
When did you become a fan of Slayer? What got you hooked on the band?
I read a review of the Hell Awaits album. It's their second proper album way back in like 1985. And it made it sound like it was some kind of thrash metal masterpiece. Thrash metal was new at the time. Metallica was doing it. Slayer was doing it. Anthrax. I wasn't that deep into the scene. I don't think I even knew Megadeth yet. So the review made it sound interesting. You remember how it was. You know, you read a review in Cream Metal Close Up and you have $10 to spend for the week. So you have to pick one record, and I picked Hell Awaits. So I put the record on, and it's just this kind of slow chug going on. It's just this groove like dun da 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 dun da 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 dun da. And after a minute, I thought, like, what the hell is this? Like, this is supposed to be a thrash metal masterpiece. This is boring. What is this? It's just this slow groove. And then, like, out of nowhere, the floor just dropped out from under me and it kicked into this higher gear, and it was off to the races. And like, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. And it was like I could feel reality crumbling around me, and nothing has ever been the same.
That's so cool.
They hooked me a little bit early, a little bit late with their second album, and that was 40 years ago now. And I've done some adult things. I've had some various jobs. Over the intervening 40 years, I have never sat down with something to write with in my hand and not made at least one pentagram.
Fans of music know that story very well. I've had that with Van Halen, and so many people could probably relate a story just like that with their favorite band. Take us back to the beginning of how Slayer formed? They're from Huntington Park, California, right?
They're from a bunch of nearby neighborhoods in southeast Los Angeles. There's Maywood, Tom Araya, Kerry King, Huntington Park area. Everybody is basically adjacent to Watts, which is one of the central pivotal seismic scenes of racial tension in America. And Slayer grew up around there. Ethnically diverse band. There were a bunch of guys that had music just calling their name to one degree. Tom Araya, the singer, older than the other guys for a few years, he was content to play in cover bands, just doing the music thing. Kerry King was very much a Judas Priest guy, dyed in the wool metal guy, the kind of guy that hated rap on general principle, hated punk on general principle, just wanted to be in a metal band. Dave Lombardo of Cuban extraction, his parents are Cuban, he's full-blooded Cuban. He grew up in those neighborhoods, listening to everything, listening to what American music was at that time, everything, plus going to Cuban clubs and seeing a lot of that ethnic music, and that just blew his mind. But the real star of the lineup, the MVP, the one that part of what I do in the book is I take a lot of fan surveys. So I'm not just saying this is what I think, I'm saying this is what fans think in general. I think it was something like 60% of fans said that the MVP from the classic lineup was the late, great Jeff Hanneman. And Jeff Hanneman was a guy that was very much into band formed in 81, 82. So they were among those generations of people that grew up listening to a very different kind of thing that we think of when we think heavy metal. A lot of Van Halen, a lot of classic rock, a lot of Scorpions. But Jeff was super into punk, hardcore punk. And that really gave him a different edge that mixed with all the different elements he brought to the table. Jeff was the kind of guy that would bring a date to a party and see that the band was playing, and he would ignore the date and go slam dance. And he's the guy that wrote most of their best stuff, and he is the guy who shockingly, surprisingly, it still doesn't feel real, died suddenly in 2013.
Crazy. Yeah, Rick Rubin's quoted in the book. He said, although he might have been the quietest member of the band personally, Jeff was the heart and soul musically.
Yeah, absolutely. Without Jeff, I think Slayer winds up being, I mean, Kerry King would have been successful doing absolutely anything he wanted to do if he'd have been a parts inspector or just a metal guitarist. But Jeff really gave it an edge and brought it to a whole new different place. Wrote hardcore influenced songs, but he also wrote a lot of mythic songs, big metal stuff. On one of their signature albums, I just figured this out on Seasons in the Abyss, when the band solo, Jeff leads off 7 out of 10 times on that record. So he very much set the tone for Slayer.
Hanneman came up with the name Slayer, but there's a story that's been out there that's not true, that it came from the movie from 1981, Dragon Slayer.
Yeah, that's been out there for years. I mean, and it's a reasonable assumption to look at that and connect it to, but reasonable assumptions tend not to be correct, and I try not to do that thing as a writer.
Now, the logo, Lombardo designed the logo.
Yeah, Dave Lombardo says he designed the logo. I was not there, but he thought Slayer, slicing, slashing, violence, it should look like somebody cut it into something, and it does. So that's the origins of the Slayer logo. And as we cover in the book, the slicing Slayer logo, the carving Slayer, that has become one of the unique distinctions of Slayer fans.
It's iconic.
No fans are more ready to carve a band's logo into their flesh than Slayer is.
Tom Araya, I love this. Born on 6/6/61.
Yeah, birthday is 666.
And he's made a living singing lyrics like Hail Satan.
Yes.
And he hails from a devout Catholic family.
Yes. His family were from an extreme group. His sister Jeanette wrote a book about growing up and what that was like and the tension between those two aspects.
Was he rebelling against that?
No,
Or...
it's really interesting. One of the chapters in the book is a book report about Jeanette's book because I wanted to let people know about it, but I didn't want to steal too many of her ideas and her content. And I wanted people to know about that. It's a respectful kind of tension. His parents didn't love it always, but they respected him doing his thing. And he and his dad have some tensions, and there's a real heartfelt reconciliation between those two. Tom, as far as I know, is the only one that has any kind of organized or serious religious faith in the band, but he's the mouthpiece of the band. So he comes at the band's lyrics like an editor, like an actor, like a director.
He's had some fascination with serial killers, right?
He does. One of the staples of Slayer content is war, death, serial killers. And he's always been obsessed with those. Some of the guys in the band read more than others, and Tom has always been into serial killers.
Dave Lombardo, he's Slayer's most acclaimed and prolific musician. You then add, quote, his distinctions only damaged his tenuous status in the group. Him being the most talented player in the group didn't sit well with the other guys. And you say that he was doomed to be at the bottom position in Slayer's hierarchy for as long as he could take it. He battled with the other band members from the start, or did they get along for a while there in the beginning?
They are a band of brothers, and as such, there is some tension there. Very early on, Dave didn't play a show because he was sick. And the rest of the guys are such workaholics. Kerry King, when he told me the story in 2007 or whatever, he still couldn't wrap his brain around it. Like, he was sick, so he didn't play a show? Like, what? It's like there's no sick in metal, dude. Like, we go. So Dave always wanted to live like something of a reasonable, normal human being, and Slayer don't really do that. They live like these extreme, dedicated, focused athletes. Really early on, when they got a van that they could drive around the country and tour in, Dave realized, hey, there's a bunk, there's room for me, and there's room for my girlfriend, fiance, future wife. She's coming with us. And that created a big, long lasting ripple effect that led to a schism. Over the years, he made a few power plays to be more influential in the band's business affairs, to have more of a say in what was going on, to be a pivotal guy. And those worked out with increasingly negative repercussions.
He's been in and out of the band.
Yeah, in and out of the
times.
band. And finally, in 2013, they had enough, and he made a very misguided, misinformed, in retrospect, big mistake that ultimately got him booted from the group.
Let's talk about Kerry King. You call him the alpha dog in the Slatanic pack. The fans mostly blame him for Lombardo's firing, but is he misunderstood by the fans? There's a chapter in your book, by the way, titled, Is Kerry King a Dick?
It's a good question. Yeah, Kerry King is an achiever. He is the captain of the band. And if you want to get anything done, you have to step on some toes and you have to hurt some feelings. And, at a certain point, his leadership style stops taking everybody else's feelings into account and says, listen, we're doing it my way or the highway. By the way, Dave, you get the highway again.
Those early days, they signed with Metal Blade, and I believe their first album was self-funded. It was with their own money. Is that what the story is?
Yeah,
Tom
they
Araya's money, I think, right? He made some money.
Yeah, Tom got some money from his dad, but Tom was the only one that has ever had a full-time job. He was a respiratory therapist, so Slayer financed that album, but Slayer do not own that album, which is fairly common in the recording business, but Tom doesn't see it that way. He's still mad about that. Now, Jeff Hanneman stayed friends with Brian Slagle and Metal Blade for a long time. That was one of the few people that he was really friendly with and kept in contact with. Kerry King still likes him. Dave Lombardo's still cool with him. But that rubbed Tom the wrong way, certainly.
Those early days, we're not talking about a band that was going to have a hit single on the radio. So they really had to work hard to develop their following. They did. There was an underground following. How quickly did that develop, and how did they go about that? Were they just playing how many, like 5-6 nights a week? Were they just out there just constantly playing?
Never that many, but they were out there constantly just playing one show a month and then two and then more, playing wherever they could. In Los Angeles, they would play the country club. They played a lot of shows with suicidal tendencies in the early days, but they would also pull up on the back of a truck and play in empty industrial parks at the time. And eventually they went north to the Bay Area scene with Metallica, with so many great talents up there. Machine Head, Exodus, well, Machine Head later, Exodus, Violence, Death Angel, and they were really part of building that scene as well, too.
Yes, it was like a grassroots thing. People started talking, you got to check out this band. And it grew, and it grew. And eventually, Rain and Blood is their third album. Eventually, they signed, this is crazy, they signed with Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin's newly found Def Jam Records, then a largely hip-hop based label.
Yeah, entirely hip hop.
Yeah, how did this all come together?
A couple different ways. Rick Rubin now has worked with, the last time I did the math on it, something like 10% of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees.
Wow.
And nobody's close. That was like twice what Phil Spector had done. So he's worked with everybody. And Rain and Blood was Rick's first rock record. This was his first step into showing the world what he could do as a producer. Comes out right around the same time as the Beastie Boys' License to Ill. He's still considered a real anomaly, some weird looking white guy with long hair and a leather jacket, but he works with rap bands. In 1986, that was weird. That just didn't happen a lot. You liked one or the other. And Bill Adler, one of the many people from Def Jam back in the day, he credits Def Jam for reintegrating popular music. It was the label that really said, listen, it's not black or white. There's two kinds of music, good and bad, and we make good music. Rick Rubin saw them play in New York one night and he just had to have them. He needed more. So instead of, after working with Run DMC, after working with Beastie Boys, after working with rap bands, LL Cool J, and next thing he wanted, Slayer. He just had to have it.
Which album is Kerry King on? He's on Beasties or he's on Run DMC or is he on both? He plays guitar
He
on.
plays on the first Beastie Boys album. He's on No Sleep Till Brooklyn. And, interestingly, No Sleep Till Brooklyn appears in the third Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which is curated by director James Gunn, who's a big metal guy and just has great sense of music. And in the very action climax of the whole trilogy, Kerry King's solo was playing. So when you need action, when you need violence, when you need groove, when you need a compelling narrative, Kerry King's music somehow fits into this big blockbuster affair.
Slayer 66 Two Thirds, a metal band biography, the fourth edition. Out now, we're talking with the author Ferris, aka DX Ferris.
D like David, X like X-Ray, Ferris like Bueller.
You write extensively about the band's third album, Rain and Blood, from '86. This is the one that's under the Def Jam record label. This is considered, not just by the fans, their best, but this is one of the most legendary thrash metal albums of all time.
It is. It's the first Slayer book I wrote was for the 33 and a third series. And 33 and a third is a series of books about or inspired by classic albums. And my successful pitch to them was, if you're going to, because there was not a metal album in the series at that point, my pitch to them was, if you're going to write about a metal album, this is the one. You have Rick Rubin, who worked with so many Hall of Fame artists, engineered by Andy Wallace, who's incredible body of work. I mean, he produced Jeff Buckley's Grace, which is as good as albums get. He did what he could for Guns N' Roses' Chinese Democracy, and he has mixed and mastered albums by pretty much everybody. And that first book that I wrote, Slayer 33 and a third, Rain and Blood, that oddly features the only real profile of Andy Wallace that I have ever really seen. Like, nobody's done a real look at his career, and that is a career that has so many highs. Somebody should get on that.
He plays an important role because it's Rick Rubin who calls on Andy to help him with things that he's not really all that, I don't know, all that versed in.
Rick and his running relationship with Slayer is one of the backbones of the book. He spends almost the entire rest of their career with Slayer, working together, partnering to various degrees. And in looking at his relationship with Slayer, you see how he works, you see how they work. You can infer a lot of things about the record business from that. And that's how they work together. So one of the things I did in this version of the book is I have a running feature called the Rick Rubin Watch. When I talk about my rock and roll bona fides, I say I have a master's degree in Slayer. I have a PhD in Donny Iris, and my undergraduate is in what I call Rick Rubinology, because he's such a fascinating guy. Ricky's a guy that does know it. He says he does not know anything about technical recording. He says he's not an engineer. He says he doesn't know his way around the studio, but he knows everything about the studio. He just doesn't get involved in the stuff that takes 12 hours of sitting behind the board. He's totally up to date on recording and techniques and sonic science, and he knows how things work. So he had a vision for Rain and Blood. He didn't like the way the Metallica albums. So as we're discussing in the book, he had a vision for everything sounding like not one big wash of bass and one aggressive wave of sound. He just wanted things to be a pulse. And Andy Wallace was the guy that was able to take that and just scientifically calibrate it into a lethal, focused force.
Angel of Death is often voted or ranked at the top as maybe the band's greatest, and it's the lead track on this album. But Postmortem, Raining Blood, the way that album ends is perfect.
It is.
What's the most underrated track on that album for you?
Oh, I don't know that it is underrated, but my favorite is not Rain and Blood, and my favorite is not the opening song, Angel of Death, both of which are incredible tunes. But the song Postmortem, like so many of their songs, is just something that is so totemic. It's hard to explain. I got a review of the book once that said, oh, he doesn't say much about Postmortem. Well, the band didn't have much to say about it. I said everything I could say about it. It's a song that just, like so much of Slayer, it has a dark, magnetic quality to it. I mean, some of my favorite metal lyrics, taste your blood as it trickles through the air. It has just a genuine menace to it. A lot of fans consider those last two songs, Postmortem and Raining Blood, they're they consider them one song, one
Yep.
piece. And so Raining Blood is a song that has its own opening act. How many songs are like that?
In the 90s, so many bands struggled amidst the grunge era. How did Slayer manage through that period? Material they released was okay, you said in the book.
Yeah, I mean, the probably what is generally, I like it, but what is generally considered the low point of their career is the 1998 album Diabolus in Musica, which you can argue whether it's a new metal album, N capital U, or umlaut U. Definitely not a thrash album. It's them doing something different. I liked it at the time. I don't like it as much now, but I still listen to it a lot. But it was polarizing. The way that people look back at Metallica's Saint Anger now is basically the way they look at Diabolus and Musica. A lot of metal bands really hit bottom in 1999. In that tour, I saw Slayer play a club with a capacity of 1,000, give or take, Metropole in Pittsburgh. Iron Maiden played that club that tour, or right around then. Iron Maiden, the mighty Iron Maiden in clubs. Now that was with Blaze Bayley. It wasn't with Bruce Dickinson, but all those bands for a while were downgraded into much smaller venues, even the biggest.
Some of them were even unemployed.
Yeah, so the 90s, very different time for not Slayer, but all metal bands.
Lineup changes in the 90s as well. Lombardo in and out of the lineup. We talked about that, and he returned in the 2000s, 2013. Let's get to it. He made some dramatic allegations that ruptured the band. What happened?
Yeah, Dave got a hold of some financial documents that he thought said certain things about where the money was going, and the band looked at those. The band looked at his account of things. They looked, certainly talked to management. And at the end of the day, Dave Lombardo was no longer in the band, and they continued on with the same management. So I got to think that they've got some bad information there.
This, by the way, is broken down in the book, too. I mean, you get into all of
Yes.
this. There isn't anything left out in this book. Anything and everything you want to know about the band is in this
I
book.
try. I try. There are a couple other Slayer books, and I tried to be fair to them and not lift all their stuff. So, any serious topic requires more than one book, but I like to think I went all out with it.
There are those common tropes among rock bands, metal bands, but it's true, though. Like the story you told about Lombardo with his girlfriend, and that caused issues. But there's always the legal issues. There's money. There's who's getting credit, publishing. It's inevitable, it seems.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, the subtitle, the short version of the book, and I'll spare you the long one, but the short version of the book title is Slayer 66 and two thirds, a metal band biography, dot, dot, dot. And that is a long ellipsis, or how fucking Slayer kicked fucking ass. So my question when I'm writing about bands or pretty much anything is not what was that like? My question is how did you do that? So Slayer is part of a group of bands known as the Big Four or the Big American thrash metal bands, Slayer, Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth. Those are the ones that pretty much put Slayer on the on the map, that put thrash metal on the map, that showed that this new kind of form of metal was a thing. So in the 1980s, the question was, how far can this music go? And in Metallica and in Slayer, we get answers to that. Metallica showed that it can go all the way, is how far it can go. Metallica starts off with this gritty, nasty, ugly, aggressive metal band with nothing going for them in traditional musical business qualities. Not good looking guys, not that catchy, certainly not popular. But over the next 10 years, they would record an album and release it that is on par with sales wise Pink Floyd, the Eagles. It's as big as it gets. So Metallica show how far you can go and how big you can get. But Slayer, the lesson you can get from them is how far can you go being an extreme, inaccessible, controversial, aggressive, confrontational band? Can you make a living doing that? Slayer show you how to do it.
June 2010 is when the Big Four played together for the very first time. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax. You called it the metal event of a lifetime in the book. The four bands, do they get along well? What's the relationship like among those four bands?
Rivals, frenemies, sometimes friends, again, brothers in a sense. They all have common roots. They've known each other forever. But after a while, people of a certain stature have different opinions about things and how to go about them. To Kerry King, he can't believe Metallica don't bang their head on stage anymore. To him, that's just an unforgivable sin. Now, eventually, of course, Tom Araya couldn't do it either, but Kerry King will rage against all forms of attrition until he cannot anymore.
Hanneman died of liver failure, 2013, a shock. The start of the decline of his health is in 2011. What happened? You said he was bitten by a spider.
Yeah, he's hanging out in the desert, lounging in as he remembers it, he was in a hot tub and he felt something bite him. Next thing you know, he has a fever. His arm is swelling up. But Jeff, being a hard-headed guy, was out in the desert, was having a good time, didn't want that to stop. So it takes him something like 10 days before he goes home. And by the time he gets home, his arm is swelling up to the point that he can barely fit in his jacket. He wants to go upstairs and fall asleep. And correctly, reasonably, thank gosh, his wife says, "You're not going upstairs and falling asleep. We're taking you to the ER." They get to the ER and the doctor's eyes bug out of their head and like, oh, it's time for surgery. A couple hours later, you'd have been dead. So what that spider bite led to was a hellacious, horrendous, disturbing, scary infection called necrotizing fasciitis that just ravages your system. The surgeon that saved him, oddly, what are the odds, was a Slayer fan. And he looked at Jeff and he said, listen, first I'm going to save your arm, then I'm going to save your life, and I'm going to save your career. And he was able to do that much, but the career thing did not fully transpire.
So there were effects of it from that point forward. He was never fully recovered. Is that the cause of the death?
Right. According to all accounts, he did not like doing the rehab. So it's not directly what led to the death. But as we say in the book, when Jeff died 2 years later, a lot of people said, oh, well, the spider bite, that was the end of it for him. Well, if you get bit by a spider, then 2 years later, how do you die of cirrhosis? So once Jeff was bitten and once he was on the sidelines, he just did not like doing the rehab that would have been necessary to put him back on the stage. He played with them in one big concert, but he was never at full form again. And in that time, basically what he did was play video games and drink and not to trivialize that. He was, we'll say, self-medicating, but drinking became more of a priority than just cleaning up and rehabbing, sadly.
There was the question of whether Slayer would continue after he died. What happened with the band after his passing? And where are we at today with Slayer?
Kerry King, shortly before Jeff exited the band, said, I look at bands and they have different members going in and out. How can you do that? But Kerry King found a way. The band was an ongoing concern. Just folding it in and not making money and not playing shows would not have helped Jeff, would not have helped his wife, would not have helped the band. So Jeff is an impossible guy to replace. There was no way you could get anybody to take his place. And what they did was come up with a inspired choice to take Gary Holt from Exodus, who was both the Kerry King and the Jeff Hanneman of Exodus. He was the team captain, contributed to all the songs, played on all of the albums. Technically not an original member, but he's the guy that had always carried the band Exodus on his shoulders. So they needed somebody that was a real professional, somebody that they knew personally, somebody that would not defer to them too much. You know, Slayer's tour manager says anybody else from a younger band would have been a fan, but Gary Holt was a friend, he was a brother, and he would have been hanging out with them backstage drinking their beer anyway. He might as well step in and play. And he has brilliantly. You know, he's not just doing Jeff's act, he's playing Jeff's riffs, but he's making his own contributions to the band.
As we stand today, they've been playing live. In fact, you were emailing me about the dates that they were playing. I think right around now they're on the road, aren't they?
Yeah, right now they have played 4 of their 6 shows that are scheduled for the year. They played in Cardiff, Wales. They played a full-size set. They were part of the Black Sabbath Festival back to the beginning. They played a truncated set there. They were one of the highlights of it and highly placed. You know, that's an important metric. After Slayer were Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Ozzy, and then Sabbath. So with every metal band ever being there, Slayer was the number 5 act above Tool. So they're back. They're doing well, and it's an incredible show. They're putting a lot more into it than they need to. My fear for the shows they were gonna was that they were gonna half-ass it or play the same set from 5 years ago, and they have not. These shows are legit. I had a great time.
Let's finish with this. Tell me about these Slatanic surveys that are towards the end of the book.
So I don't read reviews generally, but sometimes when you need to fix things and correct factual things, you take a look at the reviews, you know, somebody that's putting out a product, putting it together. So what I noticed was coming up time and time again, people would say, well, it's just his opinion. He thinks this, but it's not that. And he doesn't like divine intervention so much. And I like it because it reminds me of that summer I drove around with my pal Joey and listened to it. If he doesn't like this album, what does that say about me? Which I don't know if that argument holds water necessarily, but what I did in this was to offset my very pronounced opinion was I took a bunch of surveys. I asked people, what are your favorite Slayer songs? What are your favorite albums? What's the first one you encountered? What's the first new album after you started listening to the band? What's your favorite album? Who's your MVP from the lineup? What's your least favorite album? So that really offsets the subjectivity of it. This version of the book, as I say, is both more confrontational, but it's also more conversational. You know, I go so far as to make the point time after time, like if you have a different opinion, you're not wrong. You know, people can be eating the same food and taste different things. We can watch the same movie and notice different things. So if I don't like this particular album, well, here's what 100 or 200 fans had to say about this. How do they rank it? So I think that's a good way to rank how the band's different work sits among the fan base. It's not just me. I have opinions. You have opinions. Generally, what do people think? I have that.
The layout's really cool too. You got the pie charts breaking down the percentages and all that stuff. So thought that was cool.
Thank you. I'm big on metrics. There's a chapter where I compare and contrast the big four in as many different ways as possible, using things like standard things you can readily look up, how many Grammy nominations, how many Grammy wins, how many Spotify plays. But then I invent a few of my own. How many great album opening side one, track one songs do each band have? I think Slayer have the most, but I'm a Slayer fan. I'm a little bit biased.
But there's the conversational part of the book that gets people talking.
Yeah, exactly. I know what I think. I want to hear what you think. You tell me.
So before we wrap this up and plug the book one more time, I haven't given you a chance to explain this lovely background that you've got here. You are in quite the I see Maker's Mark whiskey behind you. People have to be wondering.
For the past 5, 6 years, I've been paying my bills mostly managing liquor stores. So I have ready access to a lot of cool boxes. And I've also been, the Slayer podcast was going to be a 1 year project. And I feel like I'm on the Slayer Gilligan's Island at this point. When it was done, I was still working on it. And now I'm over 2 years into a 1 year project, and it's not stopping. So it's been at least 2 years. I think I published like 3 books since I really thoroughly cleaned up my office. But that's what it takes. As I said earlier, a lot of people have clean offices. They haven't written 9 or 10 books.
Yeah. Folks, that is not, yeah, that's not an AI generated background. That is the real thing right there.
Yeah, that's real garbage. I mean, I put a lot of work into this, a lot of late nights, a lot of like 4 a.m., 6 a.m. going to bed. I ground my health into a doughy pulp. I'm really in like seriously, I wrecked myself. My blood sugar's out of control. I'm on a very aggressive workout schedule. Listening to Slayer helps me work out.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
for
digging
sure.
myself out of a hole. And now that the book is out and getting good reviews and people have it in their hands, my body is letting go of this tension that I've been really holding on to for like 2 years now, just getting ready to stop and release at any minute. And that moment never comes. So I'm finally like relaxing a little bit. That review I sent you, like, wow, okay, it's here, it's real.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, and hopefully I can help sell a few more copies, get the word out there. Slayer 66 and two thirds, a metal band biography, the fourth edition. Out now. You can find it where books are sold.
Yeah, Amazon, cool retailers. If you're a retailer and you want it, it's something that I own and control personally. It's independently published, so I can update it anytime I need to, and I do.
All right. And where can people reach out to you online?
Patreon.com/SlayerBook is the best way to do it. Slayer Books with an S on the end and the beginning. That'll get you there. Just search for DX Ferris and Slayer, it'll get you there. Podcast is free. Generally, free listeners get an episode every other week. Packages start at less than $1 if you want one every week. You tell me, how much Slayer do you want? I got you covered.
Cool. And I did tell you on email too, I love the way this is written. You've got your own style, your own individual writing style, which I love. And it comes across when you're talking here now. That's the way you write.
Thank you. Yeah, again, the beginning of this edition of the book was me literally reading the book aloud every week. And that gave me different thoughts on it, ways I could make it more conversational, ways I could make it more accessible.
In your own voice. Yeah.
In my own voice. It's something I did was completely revise this one. Yeah, I was trained as a formal journalist who had to be objective and clinical, and eventually that got boring. I'm also something of a composition geek. I used to write really long sentences that were like jazz solos, and eventually I realized that's bad communication. Nobody can read that shit. So now this version is shorter sentences, shorter paragraphs. It's like SOD riffs. Dun, dun, dun,
Right.
dun. Short sentence, short paragraph, a lot of white space. So it's longer, it's bigger, it has a lot more sources, but it's also easier to read.
All right, man. Ferris, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me. You do good work. You do great work. As somebody that produces content, I think you can lose your union card if they find out that you actually read the books, which you do, because
I
nobody
do.
does that.
I
And
do.
as somebody that produces content, I don't know how you do what you do.
Dude, I got a full time job. I don't know how I do it
I
either.
know.
I start to have to say no to people. Not that I don't want them to come on. I just can't keep up, which is a good problem. But maybe I could turn this into a full time thing one day. That's that, hopefully. But
That's what
yeah,
it takes. That's what it takes. No sleep for the wicked.
hey, we'll have you back on again down the road when you write your next monumental book.
Yeah, anybody out there, if you want to talk Donnie Iris, I got you covered.
Yeah, how about that, man? Donnie Iris. That's
Classic
cool.
rock king of Pittsburgh, 80 years old, still doing it. Beat cancer,
Yeah.
still doing it.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your work, man.